Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. While folks are joining the call, I'm going to run down the line just so everybody understands. I am recording this media availability, but I'm also going to give everybody permissions to be able to record on their own. And so allow me some patience while I run down the list to give you all permissions. Please let me know if you're for some reason not able to record. As I mentioned, I am going to record on my end, and so I can always share the recording as well. Just for the record, my name is Laura Costa. I am the Communications Director for the City of El Paso. We have quite a few folks today, so bear with me. Okay, everybody should have the opportunity to be able to record if you have that capability to record. And I'm letting a few more folks in here. If you do not have the ability to record, I will shoot me an email and I will be able to send you the recording that I have in my files. But everybody should have permissions now at this point in time. With that, joining us this afternoon is actually our Deputy City Manager, excuse me, our Deputy City Manager for Public Safety, Mario D'Agostino. And I will ask Mario to spell out his name for us once he comes on the screen. Also joining us is our Deputy City Manager our Deputy City Manager, Robert Cortinas. He is also the city's Chief Financial Officer. And so he can talk a little bit about some of the funds in terms of the reimbursement from FEMA. And so with that, the last note that I'll make is also joining us is Enrique Dueñas. He is with the communications at the Office of Emergency Management. And so he will be able to do the translation for those of you who need a Spanish translation. With that, I'd ask Chief D'Agostino if you could turn on your camera and unmute yourself, and please, if you could start off with a statement.
Very good. So we have, I just want to also say we also have Chief Rodriguez with the Office of Emergency Management on the line as well to answer any questions we have. But I just wanted to talk about, we presented to council yesterday. We talked about the current situation, about what we're seeing here as far as trends and numbers that are crossing through. As we all know, CBP has been reporting right approximately around 2,500 apprehensions per day. That's quite a large increase from what we've seen over the past several weeks. That number continues to climb as we're approaching that December 21st line of Title 42 possibly going away. And so with that, it adds great concerns to the city of El Paso, the community at large. And so that's what we're looking at addressing. That was the in October, we did have to operationalize. The city was running a migrant processing center. With that also came transportation issues, and we had to provide a lot of transportation. We are tracking it. We are requesting funding, and Mr. Cortines will get into that, but we are requesting reimbursement for those expenses. And that's part of what we're also doing, is asking for advance funding. Now, that advance funding is coming forth so in anticipation of Title 42. With that, Title 42 is within a week away from us, but right now what we're seeing at 2,500 apprehensions a day, that's relating to a lot of releases here in the El Paso community. And so we're looking at 1,000 to 1,200 a day. We're also seeing a large number of community releases. I believe yesterday's numbers were in the few hundred. I believe Saturday was right around 500 street releases. And so that puts that added burden on the community. That, coupled with the fact that we are in the holiday season, we know what El Paso is. It has one airport. There's limited numbers of flights out of the city. We also have a couple of bus terminals where people can get transportation there. But the availability of finding same-day travel right now is very difficult. First, with the number of migrants being released in our community, that the vast majority are seeking to move on, so they're going through those transportation channels. That, coupled with holiday travel, so people are going to see their family, they're making their trips around the holiday season, and so we're going to continue to feel that pressure as well. And so that part of our issue is now that we're looking at capacity within our shelter system. So we know that our NGOs are running at full occupancy. Our local shelters are running at occupancy. And couple that with the weather we had overnight today, cold weather, snow flurries overnight, our normal static homeless population is looking for a place to get into. And we're utilizing those shelters for migrants as well. So it does put that added strain. We're looking at what the next week or two brings to us. We've talked about that funding request, and that is so we can operationalize. What we envision there is opening up another processing center. It wouldn't just be processing, it would also be the housing of migrants. And as you've seen before in the past, we've utilized the hotel system. It's proven to be helpful, especially when you're dealing with single adults. It gives them that separation. It's an inherent system rather than large sheltering operations, but we're looking at all options at this point and trying to be stewards of the dollars here in El Paso in our request to FEMA for advance funding. With that, I'll pass it to Laura.
Thank you very much, Chief. I'm going to ask Enrique Dueñas if he could turn on his camera and be able to provide a brief Spanish translation. Thank you.
Sí, bueno, muy buenas tardes por parte del subdirector de la ciudad, Mario D'Agostino. Él le hizo una presentación ayer al Consejo de la Ciudad para reportar la situación de inmigrantes que estamos viendo en estos días, en recientes fechas aquí en la ciudad del Paso. Como sabemos, las autoridades fronterizas CBP están reportando aproximadamente 2.500 aprehensiones por día, lo cual es un incremento sustancial sobre las últimas semanas que habíamos visto números un poco más reducidos. Y esto, por supuesto, está aunado al hecho de que se acerca la fecha en la que el título 42 ya no estará en efecto. Estamos monitoreando la situación en este caso y estamos solicitando el reembolso a FEMA, en este caso el reembolso de las operaciones que se hicieron antes en septiembre, y también estamos pidiendo un fondeo adelantado para poder establecer operaciones en adelanto al título 42, como lo habíamos mencionado. Aún cuando faltan algunos días, ya estamos viendo números elevados aquí en la ciudad. Estamos viendo un número de liberaciones mayor de lo que veíamos antes. Estamos ya viendo varios cientos al día. En particular, por ejemplo, el sábado, que se vieron aproximadamente 500 personas que fueron liberadas a las calles de la ciudad del Paso. Y por supuesto, esto pone un estrés y un desgaste en los servicios de la ciudad. Como sabemos, tenemos solo un aeropuerto, tenemos vuelos limitados de salida de la ciudad. También en cuestión de transporte terrestre tenemos tanto un número limitado de traslados diarios, que aparte se ven afectados por la temporada decembrina. Hay que saber que hay muchas personas buscando salir o llegar a la ciudad del Paso por las temporadas que se acercan para las vacaciones de algunas personas, y esto solo agrega también a la falta de servicios suficientes para poder proveer a todas estas personas de un traslado efectivo y rápido fuera de la ciudad del Paso. Estamos monitoreando las situaciones y por el momento se está también utilizando ayuda de parte de organizaciones no gubernamentales, por parte de albergues también que están recibiendo a estas personas. Sin embargo, ya están a capacidad. Entonces es una situación que se está trabajando con FEMA, Y entre las ideas que se presentan al Consejo, entre los planes que se tienen proyectados, está también el poder abrir otro centro de operaciones. Sin embargo, tener alguna forma de también dar alojamiento a las personas, principalmente para la parte de la separación, tener el espacio personal de cada persona, tenerlos en un lugar digno. Entonces, es parte de las ideas que se están haciendo. Sin embargo, están todavía analizándose las opciones y estamos, por supuesto, a la espera de las respuestas de parte de FEMA. Gracias.
Gracias, Enrique. I'll now ask Robert Cortinez. Robert, if you could turn on your mic and be able to provide a summary in terms of the funding.
Sure, thanks, Laura. So just to recap, and this is information that was presented to the City Council yesterday. And so since July, which was the third quarter, the City of El Paso spent approximately $9.5 million in relation to the migrant crisis. We did receive $2 million upfront funding from FEMA as part of this. And then we did receive word this morning that there's an additional $3.8 million approximately that the city can expect to receive in the near future. And so still overall remaining about $3.5 million of city funds pending to be reimbursed through FEMA in direct relation to the migrant crisis. And so those coming in the third and fourth quarter. We continue to incur costs, obviously much less than what we had at the height of the migrant crisis. But obviously with what Chief D'Agostino mentioned as far as the plan for upcoming impact and what the Title 42 going away may have on the community. And so that's where we stand currently with the financial situation.
Thank you, Robert. With that, I'm going to go ahead and open it to.
Laura.
Yes, sir.
Laura, if I could, I'd be remiss not to talk about, we're talking about our planning and what we're doing to prepare. We were also in conversations with with Customs and Border Patrol yesterday and our bridge operations. And so we have been told that it could be as early as today. They're going to start processing at the border. So they'll be processing right at the bridges. And so with that, they're going to relocate all available officers within OFO over to the PDN bridge so they can start doing processing right there. What that's going to do is that's going to pull the resources that they currently have at the other bridges to do cargo checks. That's going to pull them away from there. And so we will see a possible delay in cargo that's going through. And so those are something we can anticipate. We understand that it's coming, but they will be doing processing at the PDN bridge is what we're told. And then they'll be actually released right there at the bridge and able to pass into the community. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Chief. I do want to ask, before we start taking questions, I do want to ask Enrique if he could provide a translation for Robert's briefing as well as Chief's final comments.
Sí, en parte de la situación financiera, lo que se reportó el día de ayer, recapitulando lo que se reportó ayer al Consejo de la Ciudad, es que desde julio 3, que fue las fechas de julio 3, que fue el tercer cuatrimestre de este año, se gastaron $9.5 millones en la situación de migrantes. 2 millones fueron ya adelantados en su momento por parte de FEMA y recibimos información el día de hoy que $3.8 millones serán recibidos ya en cualquier momento por parte de la Ciudad del Paso, hacia la Ciudad del Paso por parte de FEMA, y tenemos aproximadamente 3.5 millones pendientes en reembolsos también. Se está preparando la ciudad para el impacto económico que pueda suceder a partir del título 42, y además agregaba el subdirector D'Agostino que también estamos en conversaciones con las unidades de Homeland Security, de CBP en los puentes, y se nos dio información de que tan pronto tal vez como el día de hoy, no nos dieron una fecha específica, pero podría ser iniciando el día de hoy, se van a empezar a mover recursos hacia el puente Paso del Norte, esto para poder procesar personas en la misma frontera, es decir, en el puente mismo, lo cual ayudaría al procesamiento de estas personas. Se están procesando inmediatamente al ingresar al país en el puente mismo. Sin embargo, los oficiales que serían reubicados de otros puentes estarían ahora en el puente Paso del Norte, serían reubicados de parte de las unidades que chequean el tráfico comercial que entra a la ciudad. Entonces, en este caso, se podrían empezar a ver algunos retrasos en este tipo de cruces. Sin embargo, una vez más, como lo decía, van a estar procesándolos en el puente Paso del Norte con la mayoría de los oficiales disponibles para chequeos comerciales, y así de esta manera ayudar con la parte de procesamiento con los migrantes que están ingresando a la Ciudad del Paso.
Gracias, Enrique. With that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions. Please note we are limited on time, so once we reach the time limit for staff, we do have to close out. With the first one being Mireya Villarreal. Mireya, if you could unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
Hey, Laura, thank you so much for doing this. And of course, to everybody else who has spoken today. Quick question having to do with something that the governor had released today. And Mario, I think this probably will go to you. The governor of Texas has talked about kind of revamping what he did previously, which is more checks along the border that kind of slowed down commerce from Mexico into the US in order to kind of help with what is happening along the border. How does that factor into this? And then also, can you speak a little bit to the impact of the NGOs, what they are seeing right now, what they are telling you guys, the fear and concerns that they're facing?
Okay, so very good. Speaking to the governors, I wasn't aware that they were coming in to do the cargo inspections. I don't know if that's in coordination or communication with the federal government. As I talked about, they talked to us yesterday about moving the personnel from those inspections, regular port duties over to processing. And so I don't know if they're coming in to augment what those normal officers, those federal officials normally do, and they're handling. I don't know if that's the matter of fact on that one. So I'm not sure of that operation. What I do know is I talked earlier about cargo being affected. It's not just cargo. It's going to be all transportation across, whether it's pedestrian or regular back and forth travel in our vehicles to go visit family or work. And as a lot of that is seen here in the border community. As far as our NGOs and what they're seeing right now, that they are seeing the large numbers. They're the ones stepping up on the daily. They're housing a large number of individuals. They're also having to arrange for transportation to and from the airport. As we talked about and what we're seeing with the travel delays, with the number of flights available out, you're not getting that same day travel. So in a normal migration time, the NGOs handle it. They house, it's a 24-hour to 48-hour operation, and that person moves on to their final destination. At this point in time, with not being able to get same day travel and with seeing 1,000 people released in our area every day, that's putting that backlog. And so what used to be a 24 to 48-hour turnaround time to get somebody moving on is now turning into a 4 or 5 day, maybe even longer as the season continues.
Thank you, Chief. Next in queue is going to be Adam Powell. Adam, if you could unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was just wondering if we have any idea what Secretary Mayorkas might have shared regarding, any federal government plans to avoid a further crisis at the end of Title 42.
And I don't believe city staff were involved in that conversation. So you would need to reach out to the mayor's office. Any questions regarding Secretary Mayorkas' visit to El Paso would need to be directed to the mayor's office. If you do not have the mayor's email address, that is mayormedia@elpasotexas.gov. And El Paso, Texas is all spelled out and .gov. And so I'll ask y'all to reach out to the mayor's office regarding the the secretary's visit. Next in queue is Leslie Engel. Leslie, if you could unmute yourself.
Hi, good afternoon. Just had a quick question for Chief Mario D'Agostino. Wanted to know a little bit more about the airport. I know you had mentioned yesterday at council that the airport is kind of is at capacity now with a lot of the migrants hanging out. You mentioned busing and allowing migrants to fly out of bigger hubs like Denver and Dallas. Have you spoken, are you coordinating with Dallas and Denver with those transports? Can you just speak a little bit about how that will work?
Yeah, and so what, if that planet part of the operation comes to fruition, that is looking at those larger travel hub locations. So they have more availability of flights, they have more availability of busing. And so it's looking about moving the migrant from here to there so they can secure their travel out of those destinations. We do have communications going with the Offices of Emergency Management across several cities, nearby cities, and travel hubs is what we're looking at. Something to where we don't have to do the long distance transportation. What we saw in October, September, October was more of the unsponsored. And so Title 42 will probably bring back that population again. But as of right now, the individuals that are crossing today are sponsored individuals. So they have a means to get to where they're going. We're just going to connect them with the transportation hub so they can get there.
Do you happen to know really quick, just on average, how long migrants are waiting at the airport in El Paso? I want to say that you had put up cots for the migrants, but I'm not sure what the status of all that is.
So what we ask, and it's kind of a general rule of the airport, is there's a 12-hour policy. So anybody who's waiting for a flight out of town can wait in the airport for 12 hours, up to 12 hours. We ask those that don't have a flight out for a day or two to seek other arrangements for overnight stay, whether it's a local shelter or one of the nearby hotels, that they look into that as we're trying to reduce that number, because we are seeing such high numbers. We've seen, I believe it was close to 500-600 a night over the past weekend. So the numbers are increasing. These are people who have flights scheduled out in the morning, but those numbers continue to climb, and that will be a concern. I mean, there's only so much footprint there. We have a lot of travel going on. There's numerous people looking to get in and out of town, and this is just above and beyond that right now.
Thank you, Chief. The next person is going to be Janine Taylor Daly.
Hi, yes, thank you. My question is, has there been any coordination with the Biden administration recently, aside from your request for FEMA funding? And how long can this be sustained right now, especially with Title 42 expected to end in a matter of days and things are only expected to get worse?
I have not been on any calls with the White House in a couple of weeks now. I know our mayor has been communicating with them. Those questions would be better directed at him. What we have been stating to all of our federal partners, though, is the fact that this Title 42 going away with the numbers we're seeing today is a true emergency for the community. It's a federal crisis that's happening in the border of El Paso. And so with that, they're going to need to do some federal operation. It may be like what we saw with the Afghan. We've talked about that with the Afghan village that they've seen, where they utilize Fort Bliss to house and help people to get on their way. We're going to need operations like that. If they're already having apprehensions of 2,500 a day and Title 42 is in place, when that goes, the number could go much higher. To what that number is, nobody truly knows. You ask our federal partners, our state partners, and there's a lot of guesstimates, but it could be in the thousands for a regular basis for quite some time. So we want to be prepared. We do continue to push the government and ask for other options, other ways we can handle the situation. And some of that is looking at those. How can the federal government provide that housing or that transportation assistance to help them to get to where they're going? Because El Paso, community of 800,000, well, it's a very caring community, and we've all seen our community step up and help out. And when we had the encampment in downtown area back a couple of months back, we saw a lot of people bringing out food and clothes and toys. And that was a difficulty, getting people to get off the streets, get into our hotels so we can get them to their transportation piece, because they were treated so well on the streets. And so while there is a big heart here, there's big desire in our community, there's also just not enough to handle this type of flow. And so we have to be cognizant of that. And so we're asking our federal partners what they can do from a federal level to assist with that decompression of the region. CBP calls it decompression when they send flights out. And so that is truly helping the numbers. There'd be even more numbers of releases in El Paso if they weren't doing the decompression flights. So while we are cognizant of that and we're appreciative of that, those decompression flights that CBP does is to other border communities. So they're facing the same impacts, or they will be facing the same impacts as we are when Title 42 is lifted. And so eventually when they get to capacity as well, they won't be able to do those decompression flights. So that's automatically going to increase the numbers of releases here. And that's why we're asking the federal government to please look at other options.
So are you suggesting that the Biden administration utilize military bases possibly to house this huge number of people coming across?
That's been one of the suggestions. We've suggested that. We've also suggested the fact that they look at decompressing to other areas. Like I just talked about, CBP decompresses to other border towns. Maybe we look at them decompressing and actually doing the releases at those larger transportation hub locations. And so what that does is it allows people to get their transportation out of those communities a lot easier because there's more availability of transportation.
Next is going to be Camilo Montoya. Camilo Montoya Galvez, if you could unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So earlier this year, when the city faced a sharp increase in the arrival of Venezuelan migrants, it started this operation to send some charter buses to New York City to alleviate border crowding in facilities there. Is the city expected to reinstate this busing operation? Is it considering it?
You know, as I talked about a little bit earlier, that response was dictated by the situation at the time. And the situation at that point in time was the majority, if not the entire population that was being released here locally was from Venezuela. And 50% of them were unsponsored. They had no means to get there where they were going. So we asked them where they wanted to go. They chose New York City. So that's where we set up the charter system. Right now, people have a means to go. I mean, with Title 42 in place, it took that unsponsored aspect out of it. So right now, it's just about helping people connect with travel to go where they want. They have their own funding to get that done, or their own sponsors who can assist them with that funding.
So right now,
with Title 42 going away, that would open it back up to the remaining Venezuelan population that wants to come over. Those that are already pre-staged, and we know there's some in the Juarez area, that would allow them to cross over. So it might bring that same similar type of operation back, but I don't think that will be the sheer numbers as what we saw in this previous crisis.
So you're not currently considering reinstating that operation?
It's just a tool in our bag. It's something that we might have to do. It just depends on the circumstances.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Next is Ted Hessen. Ted, go ahead.
Hi, all. Thank you for holding the call. And excuse me, I joined a little late, so this may have been answered at the top. Are there right now migrants on the streets in El Paso, and are you concerned for them with the temperatures getting below freezing in the next few days? And then I also wanted to mention, we've reported on migrants in this most recent group who arrived on Sunday saying they were kidnapped in Mexico. And I wonder if the city has come across people saying that, and if you're seeing a rise in people saying they were kidnapped or detained while crossing in Mexico.
I'll start off with the last part of that question. And so we have not been getting reports of that here locally. I mean, we've heard stories, no one's reported it to us as well. So that is something we do continue to monitor. We you know, I know the NGOs are working closely with the migrants as they're passing through the county's processing center, and then they're trying to determine what their needs are. And that's the first thing when you bring somebody in, it's making sure they have those basic needs met, and how we can assist them and what kind of assistance they need. With your first part, yes, we did talk about at the onset, you know, the cold temperatures that we saw overnight, the last few days. You couple that with our normal transient population, our homeless population here in El Paso, it's these cold nights where they actually do seek shelter. And so you couple the availability of beds with the use of migrants as well. And so that is a concern. You know, will there be enough beds or people having to remain on the street? I have not been notified of anybody being on the street who didn't want to be there. I know that I heard reports of a dozen or so last night. When they talked to them, they didn't want any assistance getting to any of the shelters, anything like that. They're awaiting their own travel out of the bus depot here in town. So they were just actually walking around. We got some reports today that there was some people in downtown area, and them, again, they're waiting for their transportation. So.
Thank you, Chief. Next is Giovanni Carrillo. Giovanni, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, hi. So I did speak with some migrants today who were out here in downtown who say that they weren't able to go into any shelters because they were full, and so they were forced to sleep outdoors. And today, this morning, also, migrants were told by police that they aren't allowed to sleep outdoors because of the city's camping ordinance, where then can they go?
That would be our local shelters. I haven't had any communication. I haven't heard from them as far as capacity. Chief Rodriguez, I don't know if you have an update on local capacity within our homeless shelters.
So if there's no room in shelters, is there anything else or any other place that the city can provide at this time for migrants, given that the temperatures are pretty cold outside right now?
So the only shelter operations we do have going on right now is for the COVID isolation. So we continue to do that. We stand up hotel rooms for those that have COVID so that the shelters don't have a cluster or mass spread of the virus. So we are continuing to do that. I think that the largest issue to focus on here is that the CBP continues to do street releases, and it's these street releases that are taking a toll on the system. It's putting that over pressure on our local sheltering capabilities. We do have teams going out, roving teams, to see how they can assist to connect people with sheltering or transportation to local shelters, hotels, or to the airport so they can get their transportation out of town. So we do have roving teams out there offering that assistance, but I haven't got any updates as of yet today.
Can the offer
next in the queue is going to be James Schultz. James, if you could unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you guys. We're grateful that you're so transparent here. We really appreciate it. Two quick questions, or one if I can. Mario, yesterday I read the transcripts during the city council meeting, and you seem to suggest that there is a benefit for the city of El Paso to declare an emergency. And I didn't get the sense that the mayor was completely on board with the declaration. Can you just describe for us kind of what with a declaration what that comes with, and what possibly what tool you don't have with that?
So a declaration gives us the ability to ask for state assistance. So whatever that might be, whether we need a large scale housing facility, whether we need property, whether we need staffing. The biggest risk I talk about is pushing our staff thin. So as we operationalize and we're running these long hours and these long operations, staff is not getting that needed time off. And so that's always a concern. So by doing a declaration, that allows us to ask them for staffing. We've utilized that staffing here locally. It's used around the country when they do declarations. For El Paso, we've utilized it during, as recent as the COVID pandemic. And so we brought them in and they assisted us with testing. They assisted us in the food banks, handing out food. They did the vaccinations. And so that was a great asset. Without that, we would have had to utilize all of our employees to take care of all that work on top of their normal daily jobs. And so that's what a declaration does. It gives you that ability to ask others for the help that we need.
Thank you, Chief.
And are you getting any sense that there will be a declaration? I'm sorry, I'll let it go after that.
I'll go back to that same transcript you referenced, and you can hear where the mayor stands at this time. He's considering it, but he has not made a decision. And state law in Texas here requires that it's either the mayor or the county judge who has to declare an emergency. So we can only recommend. Our recommendation is to declare, and it's for those very same purposes. It's making sure we have the staff. We have staff ready to handle our normal day-to-day task of emergency response, of all the services we provide to the community of El Paso, and then making sure that we have the bandwidth to handle what we possibly could see with Title 42 going away.
Thank you, Chief. Next is going to be Uriel Garcia. Uriel, if you can unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. Question is, Title 42 is a fairly new tool being used as an immigration control tool. And we've seen surges of migrants at the southern border. So my question is, before Title 42 was being implemented, what did El Paso do to control or help alleviate the stress of high surges of migrants coming into El Paso? And if that worked, is that something that El Paso could do again?
Yeah, but we've never seen a migration in the numbers to this extent, and not for such a sustained period. And so I'm going to go back to 2018, 2019 surge when we saw large numbers. To get up to that 1,000 a day mark took a 6-month period to climb that high. In this recent surge back in late August, early September, it happened within a matter of days. What we're seeing right now is that's the daily normal. We're seeing apprehensions climb up by 500-600 in the past week. And so now we're averaging around 2,500 apprehensions a day. Those numbers are unsustainable. So it's not the same operation. Normally, what we've seen in the past, what we provided is exactly what we're providing today. And so we have over 60 employees that are staffed to handle the migrant crisis. We are not operating a processing center at this time or housing operation. And so what we do is we assign those individuals out to help the NGOs. So they're actually out in the NGOs helping house the migrants who are passing through, who are staying in our community. And so we're helping in that terms of resources. We also help with assistance at the airport. So we're allowing them to stay in that airport for that period of time. And we're making sure that their needs are met while they're there, as far as their safety while they're inside the airport. And so we're doing those operations. We're still coordinating. We're still communicating with everybody. We're working with our NGOs on any needs they might have, whether it's transportation from the shelter itself to the airport or to a bus terminal. That's how we do it. In normal times and in non-crisis times, that's enough. But right now, when you're seeing these large numbers multiplying, and we're not even at Title 42 going away, as you said, that's the concerning part. Our infrastructure cannot keep up. There's not enough flights. There's not enough bus transport out of town on a daily basis to allow same-day travel. And that's when you see the shelter capacity spike.
Dalida, if you could unmute yourself.
Sí, gracias, Laura. Mi pregunta la respondió el Chief de Agustino a Mr. Carrillo, era relacionado a los migrantes que fueron retirados de Union Plaza. No sé si Enrique me podría proveer la traducción. Básicamente quiero preguntar si estos migrantes no pueden estar en Union Plaza o en las calles del Paso debido a la ordenanza y los albergues están casi a su máxima capacidad. ¿Dónde se pueden quedar y qué plan tienen ustedes como ciudad?
Enrique, si puedes prender tu cámara y poder dar la respuesta.
Sí, lo que decía el subdirector de Agostino era, bueno, como sabemos hay una ordenanza en la ciudad que no permite que la gente esté acampando en las calles. Lo que se ha visto en los centros de traslado, como es la estación de Greyhound aquí en el centro, es personas que han estado decidiendo quedarse ahí para esperar su traslado. Tenemos equipos municipales que han estado saliendo a las calles, personal que ha estado intentando localizar a estas personas para poder ofrecer los servicios básicos, para poder encauzarlos a una organización no gubernamental, algún albergue. Y estamos monitoreando, tenemos empleados también con los albergues para poder asistir y tratar de llenar esta necesidad de camas para tener a todas las personas cubiertas. Sin embargo, hasta la información que decía el subdirector de Agostino, la información que él presentaba es que estos números de personas allá afuera fueron contactados por los equipos, sin embargo, no decidieron quedarse en estos centros para poder esperar su traslado. En el momento no tenemos las cifras exactas de la capacidad de los albergues, eso es algo que vamos a estar trabajando, pero como lo decía él, tenemos los equipos que están yendo y tratando de alcanzar a estas personas para poder ofrecerles o encauzar y buscar en dónde pueden quedarse.
Gracias.
Gracias, Enrique. Leslie?
Yeah, just one other quick question. Yesterday it was mentioned that the Border Servant Corps was helping out in Las Cruces. Did you happen, I reached out to that organization and I haven't heard back, but I know you are working with different organizations like that. Do you happen to know, how you're networking with that particular organization and how it's helping?
Yeah, and so Border Servant Corps is a big player in the El Paso region as far as housing migrants. And so they've been doing sheltering for quite some time. We assist them with what we can as far as transportation. There's a lot of coordination that goes back and forth, whether they're bringing them here to the El Paso airport so they can fly out of here, or we're actually sending them over there. When we had the unsponsored, migrants passing through, what they were doing is they were sending them over here so we could make sure that they made it to their final destinations. So we were coordinating with that. Those coordinations are still in place. I know there's been some talks. They're interested in expanding their footprint, actually maybe looking at opening a site here in El Paso. It's just initial conversations, but it's conversations that we're having, and we value what they provide to the community because they are doing a lot in the term of sheltering. And so that's just part of the conversations we're in right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And last question, Giovanni.
Yes, this is again about migrants sleeping outdoors. Now, if there are more migrants sleeping in downtown El Paso tonight, how will the city help them out, and where will they be placing them?
I can't tell you where they'll be placed. I mean, it's based on bed availability, so they'll be looking into that. I can tell you that we do have some crews out there offering assistance, checking what they need. A lot of people are choosing to be out on their own. They're waiting for the next bus out of town, and so that's something that they're free to do. We will have teams on the ground looking and talking with them, coordinating, seeing what we can do to assist them. But exact locations I couldn't give you.
And Chief, thank you so much. Chief, last question, if you could just do a recap, because there was some folks who missed out at the beginning. If you could do a really quick recap of the FEMA money, how much they have owe us, and how much they've agreed, how much is pending.
So if we look at what's owed the city of El Paso, we go through the end of November 30th, that total amounts over $7.28 million. That is for third and fourth quarter expenditures. The third quarter loan was $5.13 million. We did receive notification this morning that they would be able to get us partial funding up right now. They're still evaluating the rest of of where they're going to get the remaining funding to pay the full balance out. But out of that $5.13 million that we submitted for reimbursement, we should be receiving $3.7 million. So that is good news for the community of El Paso. That's money that we've used to finance the operation to handle this federal migration surge that we're seeing in our community. And so that is good news. We got that we should be getting that 3.7 million, but we got word that they were able to identify that funding. They're still looking at what they can do as far as advanced funding for fourth quarter. Fourth quarter started as of now or through the end of November. I believe the fourth quarter expenses are at 4.35 million. So that number continues to climb. When I talk about the help we're doing at the food banks or with the NGOs, and I talk about all that staffing we have on hand, those are monies that we are putting for reimbursement as well. And so it's at 4.35. We have received 2 million advance funding. So if you look at that, we're still owed 2.2 million dollars on that aspect and counting. These are old numbers, a couple weeks old. So that continues to climb. We're asking for advance funding into fourth quarter, and that'll get us through the rest of this month and through January. That's what they're looking at possibly funding at this point in time. We are asking for advance funding. We did ask for it. That was in the number of 4.7 million per month. What that does is it does that sheltering capacity and that processing for up to 600 individuals a day. That coupled with the county's operations, we're looking at doing that so that we can get through this current surge that we're seeing right now.
Thank you, Chief. And with that, we're going to go ahead and close out this media availability. For those of you who need a Spanish translation, Enrique and I will stay on and be able to give any kind of last circle back with any additional questions for Spanish language media.
Laura, nada más yo quería preguntarte algo. Sé que dijeron que el centro de procesamiento podría tan pronto como hoy habilitarse en el puente Paso del Norte, y el de Agustín había dicho nada más que iba a afectar el cargo, pero después reiteró que era todo el tráfico. Entonces, si me lo podrían decir en español.
Enrique,
por favor.
¿Tienes esa nota?
Sí, en efecto, sí, primero dijo que era cargo, después habló de todos los vehículos, todo el tráfico entrante. Pero lo que decía el subdirector de Agostino es, van a ser reubicados oficiales de acuerdo a la información que nos provió CBP, la Patrulla Fronteriza y Homeland Security en los puentes. Van a estar reubicando oficiales principalmente de las zonas de carga del tráfico comercial entrando para poder hacer las revisiones, para poderlos. Esta personal va a estar asignado ahora a personal de operaciones de procesamiento en el puente Paso del Norte. Sin embargo, también existen las posibilidades de que oficiales de tráfico general, también de tráfico a pie, sean trasladados también a estas operaciones de acuerdo a cómo se vaya expandiendo la operación, lo que se vaya necesitando, y esto puede afectar todas las líneas, a todo el tráfico entrante a la ciudad del Paso, no solo el de carga, sino también tráfico que está entrando a pie por los puentes, tráfico que está entrando, vehículos normales, civiles que están entrando a la ciudad del Paso. Entonces, esto es algo que está determinando CBP. Ellos podrían ser quienes pueden proveer más información al respecto de cómo se haga este movimiento, pero hasta el momento esa es la información que nos han provisto ellos a nosotros.
Gracias, Enrique. ¿Algunas otras preguntas en español? Viendo que no, con eso, gracias a todos ustedes que se quedaron aquí en la llamada. If any of you have any trouble with your recording, si algunos tienen problemas con su grabación, feel free to reach out to me via email at cruz-acosta@elpasotexas.gov. Any questions for the mayor's office, please reach out to the mayor's office at mayormedia@elpasotexas.gov. Thank you again, everybody.